Good evening, and welcome to another Contagious Smile Unstoppable. In the background, you hear my husband laughing, because this is take two. And we are here to talk about all sorts of things going on, but we're going to start with the release that is coming of the Narc Narcos Air book, which is the prequel to Who Kicked First. And I have asked the love of my life, my soulmate over here, to look at it and read it and tell me his thoughts on it. And then we're going to talk about narcissists tonight in different capacities. So what did you think of it? Is it a must read? And he's going to be incredibly honest. He's not going to be like, well, it's my wife, I have to, whatever. But what is your take on the book?
So my wife writes very thoughtful, and of course I'm not into her type of books that she likes to read. What? Don't look at me like that. But
You mean the type I like to write?
Yes.
You said read.
Read and write.
Okay.
Yes. Because you don't read any of the sci-fi stuff I would like to read.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was correct in my statement. Thank you very much for correcting me.
You're welcome.
Anyhow, she gave us an insight on, the makeup of how she was brought up as a little girl, as a teenager, and then a young adult around her loving, very, very loving and caring grandparents. And then the contrast of her narcissistic parents, biological sperm donor, egg donor, what have you. And it's very insightful on who Victoria is and was back then. She's very much her grandparents and none of her biological parents. And you'll see that throughout the book. And hopefully you'll see that she's passed the same traits on to her daughter. Right? What?
Her daughter.
Her daughter.
Not our daughter.
Well, she's bathing our dogs right now.
Yeah, but you always say it's...
Well, she's my daughter. Okay? And we'll get into her books later, which you can get on Amazon.
But we both have had narcissists in our family sides, both of us. And for the fact that when you first started reading it, and for people who don't know, Michael and I know each other for 25 plus years. He has met them, known of them, known their reputation. And so people understand that. And when he was reading this, he even said to me, I'm trying to remember, you said, I don't understand how you're not the most bitter woman in the world. And why did you say that?
Because of all the shit you've been through. I mean, for a father to sit there and whether it was dangling something before you or making a verbal threat, hey, you better not tell your mom about this. We're going to do this and you keep your mouth shut. Okay? And being a child, you're going to do what your parents say. At some point you're going to rebel. You're going to become a teenager. But if this has been instilled in you since early in your life, you're going to be mentally trained to obey. Okay? Just like baby elephants. They put a big chain around their leg as babies, and they learn that they cannot break it. And then when those elephants, let's say if they're in a circus, they only use a small rope to keep them attached.
So your metaphor is that I am this big elephant.
That's where you went? Really?
Well, I'm just saying.
Another fat joke?
Well,
No.
And
it's the same concept. You've been trained to think, hey, I'm chained with this big chain that's indestructible. I cannot break it. I cannot get away from these people. I must do what they say. And then later on, when you have more control, when you have more power, you don't realize it. Okay, it took what? It took so much. It took you at the very breaking point to up and leave. And with the help of your grandmother at the time,
yes,
you were able to leave.
But I want and our shows are never rehearsed. They're off the cuff, as you could tell. But, excuse me, what was ironic is that when I was getting older, my bio parents, mostly my bio sperm donor, would actually say that I hated my grandparents and I wanted nothing to do with them. But, and like I said, Michael's been in my life for 25 plus years, is that if you ever went to any place I ever lived, any apartment I ever had, every room in every apartment had pictures of my grandparents. When Faith was in the NICU, it was her grandparents' pictures that were over her head in the incubator as her guardian angels. But they would say that I hated to be anywhere near them. And if you have known me for 1 hour of your life, you would know that all I talk about are my grandparents. Like in our home here, where we are now, there are pictures of my grandparents wherever you look.
In every room.
They are in every single room. They are. And and when you come into our home, we have a huge, huge wall, and it's pictures of family that, our family, and my grandparents are there. And it's to be told of this I was constantly berated, and I didn't know, because back then narcissism was a word. Narcissist were a word, and so it was a much different time than it is now. And you were saying earlier that you didn't have that with your grandparents, but you had it with your mom. Because why? Why did you didn't have it with your grandparents? And I understand that your dad wasn't in the picture, but that wasn't your dad's fault.
No. What do you mean, why I didn't know? Why didn't I have it?
Well, I'm saying you didn't know why your dad wasn't in the picture.
No, I didn't know I had a narcissistic mother because of how young I was. You just don't know. If you're used to being told what to do every day, then, some things that we now see are out of the ordinary, you take it for granted. That's just dad. That's just the way he is. That's just the way he talks. Right?
Right.
But, when they start, when I read in the one chapter, I believe it was chapter 4 or 5, where your biological father made you sign a contract. That's beyond.
Let's talk about
that's super narcissistic.
Let's talk about that for a minute. We have been doing, we at A Contagious Smile have been doing a series that will be released soon called Narc Narcos Air, Help Me, I'm Gasping for Air. And it's been co-hosted with Dana Diaz, who is an amazing person.
Hi, Dana.
You have to go out and get her book, Gasping for Air. It's one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. And I've read it probably 3 times now. And her prequel is coming out in October. And we're going to do everything we can to help her launch that. I can say that I am the only person outside of her publicist and her who have seen the cover. And it is amazing. That's all I can say is it's absolutely off the chart amazing. Dana is an amazing person. You would think we were cut from the same cloth in regards to the fact that she was the black sheep. She was never good enough. But I don't want to tell her story. It's hers to tell. But on the last taping of the series episode we did, we were talking about narcissistic grandparents. And we brought up the contract, which I had sent her for her to review before we did the airing. And in this contract, and Michael has seen it, that it says on there certain things. They had just bought their house, and I don't think it qualifies as a house as big as it was. I'm just right at 10,000 square feet, 7-car garage, movie theater. I mean, am I missing anything?
How many stories was it?
Well, they never called a basement. They called it the terrace level. It was so ridiculous. But it says in the contracts things such as you're not allowed to hang anything on the walls, regardless. You have to wear rubber-soled shoes at all times in the house. Now, let's take, for instance, for a moment, that Faith is now physically 10-ish, okay? But mentally she is not, which is not really relevant, but I'm trying to make sense for everyone to understand. She has some developmental delay because of all the coding and seizures that transpired during the neonatal intensive care unit stay when she was life-flighted. So with that being said, they drew up this contract and said that she had to sign it and that I had to sign it. Well, when
She was how old?
Physically about 10.
Wow.
And it said you have to wear rubber sole shoes at all times. You can't put anything on the wall. And here's where it gets even more absurd, if that's at all possible, is that it says you will not call your grandfather certain words. And when you read this, it's just crazy. It really is. And he taught her to give the finger, which she thought was hysterical until she turned it around and gave it to him. Then it became oh no. And I have pictures of him with her, and every time he's with her, he's flipping her off. Every time. But in this, it also says that they finally agreed to get trained on her and her medical needs. She's 10. And you're telling me that you're admitting you've never been trained on her. And what people don't understand is with faith, and anybody who has special needs children will understand, or special needs spouse really, is that every tiny move could be a life-altering hospitalization. She could choke on water. She could choke on food, what consistency the food is, her daily implementation of her protocols that have to be in place, and Mimi even went so far as to create a schedule for her. But in the schedule, it doesn't say anything about therapies, appointments, doctors. It even writes what time she's supposed to eat, what time she gets up in the morning. But anyone who knows she's on a continuous overnight feed at this point to sustain life. This is life support for her because she can't take in enough caloric intake orally that she has to be on tube feeds. Well, when you disconnect her feeding and you kibosh her, she can't eat anything by mouth for at least 2 to 3 hours. She cannot. But Mimi did a schedule for her, disrespecting and having no care at all for my boundaries as her mother, saying that she had to get up at this allotted time and immediately have breakfast. And then didn't even give her enough time to even make breakfast. You had to alone eat it. Because at this point in time, I would say it probably took about half an hour or 45 minutes to consume maybe 2 ounces.
Yeah.
And that wasn't allotted in there. Neither was the therapies or whatever. And it was, you have to take the dog out whenever we tell you to. You have to do your laundry. You have to do your mom's laundry. You have to do this. You have to do that. That's not even part of the contract. So they initial that they're going to learn how to do all this. We're talking about the fact she can't have CPR like other people could.
Mm-hmm.
Her anatomy's different. The fact that she had a feeding tube that you needed to know how to change and not, mess the track up. We were decannulated, so tracheostomy wasn't an issue. But there were so many things. You had to know that you couldn't put something on that could turn into a disco light, if you will, because she had a history of seizures and a lot of them. And she has stopped by the grace of God having these seizures, but they could still come back. So you had to put things in place to make sure that, you didn't put on any kind of an effect by a light flickering that could induce a seizure to start.
So would you say this contract was very childish?
This child is, yes, but then it says on there in handwriting, fine. It says on there, we agree to spend time with her. And
the grandparents.
Correct. And then it says on there that we're not allowed to talk about.
Folks, this is all in the book.
My brother, who is technically her uncle, because this individual means a lot to Mimi, not to him. It's his son. And you'll see why in the book.
Oh, yes.
And everybody had to sign this contract. Now, people often ask me, why is it that I stay over there? Well, anybody knows that when you're having a lot, at that point in time, we had well over 100 ER visits. We had dozens of surgeries at that point. We had 20 to 25 appointments a week. There was no way.
That's incredible.
That
you cannot hold down a job.
You couldn't go get a job. And who's going to hire you knowing you got to miss that much work?
Right.
She has to be watched at all times. We have letters from the chiefs of the individual departments of the hospital that have written, you must be trained by mom to spend any amount of time at all, regardless of what it is that you're doing, with Faith. And these letters are in the book. But I had no choice because
And nobody's going to fault you for that.
Right, but I've been asked a lot.
Unless it's your bios.
I've been asked a lot, well, you stayed there. Yes, but I stayed there thinking that even though we never saw them because they were, on their way of doing whatever they were doing all the time, the fact that I was able to devote my entire time to her healing and her growth and the prosperity of her being who she is now, like who she is right now.
And it was well worth it.
Absolutely, and I'd have done it again. But it was definitely times where I had to pay the price for it. But I thank them for allowing us the opportunity, but they didn't go without benefit. I mean, that's
right.
For sure,
And that's unfortunate. But as the reader will see in your book, that is exactly how he is. He will take advantage of you, of his grandchild.
But he doesn't claim her.
Right. Well, in certain emails he did.
And in certain emails he did not.
Yeah.
There is a letter that he wrote, multiple pages long, and I don't want to give too much away, where he identifies her as, we have a special needs grandchild who lives with us, and that's verbatim. And then it goes to say, we had to take the little girl out of her room. I mean, who identifies their daughter or granddaughter in that manner? Like, are you kidding? That's just unheard of. I mean, it's crazy unheard of. The fact that it's their way or the highway, there's no happy medium whatsoever. And the fact that, like, I don't understand how people, and I actually had lunch with the individual who had been my therapist forever and a day, who has since retired, and her husband, and it's mind blowing how literally my bio parents care more about the perception of what they have than who is around them. And it's like, now you look at it, and my older half sister, and I don't know if my brother is still with his boyfriend. I don't know. But those two individuals were given, you're not allowed on our property. I'm not. Faith is not allowed on the property. I mean, it's unheard of. Who gives you're not allowed on the property notice to a 14-year-old little girl who mentally is like 9 at that point? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I had my doubts about releasing this, but so many people said, how is anybody going to learn if they don't see that this isn't just them it's happening to, that this is not normal. This is not the everyday, way about life, and it's tough because, like, you had a narcissistic mom, as you said, but you're definitely the black sheep because you don't even talk to your mom or your brothers, but when something happened to one of your brothers, you and I were both like, we'll be right down there, whatever they need. We were trying to send stuff, whatever we could do. And at that point, I never met that brother, right? But that's how you and I are. But we are the bad ones in our narcissistic parents' lives. In their eyes, they turn around and make us out to be the bad ones.
And so many times in your book, you reference that especially your mother or your biological egg donor would transfer the blame on you.
And for any and everything. I wasn't even there. And I would get it's like climate change was my fault, I mean, it wouldn't matter. And then I said to her one day, I'm writing this book. It's really hard. I'm having a hard time in this section. Would you come up and
first book?
Who kicked first? And I was like, could you come up and look at it? And I texted this to her, and the text is in the book. And she goes, no. And I was like, don't you want to read what I've been writing? No, she doesn't care. But when I finished the book, I was so excited that I'd had it finished. It took me years before I decided to put it out there, and it still wasn't good enough. Like, I just wrote a book, and it wasn't good enough. It was, Josh has written a paper, and it's been downloaded like 100 times. And I asked her, how many times did you download it out of that 100? Right? Because it was for college.
Sure.
And that it doesn't matter. You're not as good as him because he wrote a paper. And okay, well, in that paper, does anybody reference the fact that he talks about how horrible his home life was? Because he did. And it's referenced in there. But that's not ever mentioned, especially to my bio dad, right? I think one of the most unbelievable ones was when he was graduating college, and he's smart. Josh is smart. Intellectually, he's very smart. I mean, I think his dreams were ripped away from him. He wanted to be a teacher. I truly believe he'd been a fantastic teacher. He would have helped people that needed to be helped. He would have helped the underdog, right? I mean, he would have believed in the ones that didn't believe in themselves. Seriously, and that's not much you see in education anymore. But when he was graduating, they told my bio dad, and I don't mean to laugh in a comical way, they told him that he was only allowed to bring one person to graduation. Each person was only allowed to have one graduate and one plus one. And I asked where this was being held. And he tells me it's at like one of the major arenas in downtown. So I said, you got to be kidding me. I call the school. I talk to admissions. They transfer me to whomever. I'm on speakerphone. My bio dad is right there. He asks for the graduating class, how many people are allowed? As many as you want. Are they limited? No. Okay. They're not limited. Holidays come around that.
Wait. So who told y'all?
Oh, I wasn't invited.
Okay. Who told him?
Raisin was not going to to because he wasn't invited. Was it
Mimi or Josh?
Mimi. Because they were inviting Claire. They were inviting the half-sister.
So the mom told the dad, only one person can go, and that's me.
Right.
That's hilarious.
And it ended up that Claire and Claire's husband, and I don't know, but I think their kid also went. But he wasn't supposed to go because it was only a plus one. And I mean, these are just examples of things that make you say, oh my God. And I told my therapist that, I had lunch with yesterday. I was like, I don't know how I'm sane. I really don't. But if I hadn't kept all of the proof of all this whole time, I really would have had a mental breakdown. But there was times I wanted to just give up and not care anymore. But then I would have been just like them.
But you had your grandmother.
I did, but I only had her until I was, just under 21. That's all.
Yeah.
And then I moved out of state because I just didn't want to. Well, I had already moved out of state, but before she had passed, I just didn't want to be anywhere near her. We stopped talking. My bio dad and I stopped talking when I was very young, and that made it a challenge because we were still residing within the same domicile of one another. But nothing was ever good enough. I could never do anything that was good enough. And then I spent the beginning of my adulthood just trying to make him proud of me, and could never accomplish that either. I mean, I would get comments like, hey, here's a Sharpie marker. Why don't you, go connect the dots to all your scars and you'll be busy for hours. Or there's not going to be a guy alive who's going to want to be with someone who looks like you. I mean, or if Freddy Krueger and the Elephant Man had a baby, I guess that's where you came from. And like I said, and I'll say it a million times, I'm very grateful for the fact that they let us stay there, but it wasn't without malice, trust me when I say that. But as a mom, my first priority was taking care of her and making sure that she was thriving. And I couldn't have done that if I was anywhere else. And so I am indebted to them for that. And I will always be thankful for that. And
yeah, but it doesn't make up for everything they did to your childhood and, young adult life.
Well, I mean, it's tough. It is tough. And, I'm not the only one.
It's tough to see that you came out so much different for them. And, once the reader starts reading this book, they'll see, where your drive came from,
Well, and the thing is that, like, for every one picture, there's probably 10 more I didn't put in. So it was quite hard to make the decision of what to put in and what not to put in. And I did redact the faces. I did make sure the names are not the government issued names, and there's no geographic placement anywhere. So, it's not specifically pointing and saying, ha ha ha, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. It's not doing that. But it is tough because, I mean, you saw him firsthand. He was a power-hungry, authoritative figure, that it was his way or the highway, and that was kind of how it is. I will never forget, it happened to be one of the sweetest things ever. Would you do you mind telling everybody what you said you wanted from him when he...
Oh, I was going to actually do a prenup. And
not by my request.
No, and put it on his desk while he was sitting in his office.
Never on the computer at night, as he states.
But I ended up telling him, the only thing I want from you is your daughter. And that's what I took away from him, his daughter and his granddaughter. The two biggest loves of my life. They have been the source of my joy and happiness. And they are the glue that holds his family together. And that little shit in there, washing our dogs, I love her to pieces. And she's my favorite. Don't tell the other kids.
But now that I'm having a little, sorry, but you have seen how he is, and like you have run into him several times, and
not a word's been spoken.
He will not say a word.
Probably
4 years.
Yeah, three and a half, 4 years. Is it 4 years now? 3.5.
He won't even ask you. He's like, I don't care that he hasn't seen me since 4 years. I don't care if he hasn't seen the fact I'm amputated. He hasn't seen my amputation. None of that. But I mean,
the fact was known.
Oh, yeah, you know he knows.
All the surgeries you've had.
He knows.
All this
he's been told,
known.
not by us. But what about the fact how many times we almost lost faith? Yeah. And he knows all about that.
Not one word.
And never asked you, hey man, I know whatever's going on, but
how's my granddaughter? Nope.
Not a word. Nothing. I mean, that's what's so ironic. It's just...
Any of you listeners out there that have narcissistic parents like this, come on our show and help us understand some of this. Maybe because maybe I don't see it the way y'all saw it, or maybe this is an extreme circumstance. Maybe there's some different factors that y'all had that we did not. Please write us at contagiousmile.com and come on our show.
Well, tell me about how it was as a man for you to have a narcissistic parent, because we know I'm giving great doubt about
like I said,
female.
I didn't realize, because when you have just a single parent.
Well, she didn't stay single long.
Yeah, but my stepfather was a different way. He wasn't narcissistic. He was a no-nonsense, pick you up by the scruff of your neck and knock you around. Hey, boy, you don't disrespect, you don't backtalk me, you do what I say. Okay? He was more roughhouse. So I got jacked up one time. He was a little short Italian guy. A lot shorter than me. I was a tall kid. But he had some guns on him. He was stout. And he picked me up off the floor one time, up against the wall, and told me one time, he said, there's two things I hate, a liar and a sneak. And you're both of them. Yep.
And your mother just stood there.
She was yelling at him at the time, not to hurt me. But when you grow up with a narcissistic parent, in my case, a mother, you just say, well, that's how Ma is. That's just how she is, And then you also see later on, you see a different side where, oh, she's playing the victim, and that's how she gets away, So yeah.
Why do you think more people don't see these individuals for who they really are?
How is it me? How do you see me come in and attack your family members by telling you, hey, Victoria, that man is wrong. He's controlling you. He's doing this. He's doing that. And what do you say as the victim or as the child?
Just as I did numerous emails that said
exactly.
But I'm saying, like, people in general that don't see their true colors, but then they still deal with them for whatever reason on the outside.
Is it not kind of like being a survivor?
Well, a lot of people don't know because they put that facade on. They put that mask on. And
you can't change your parents.
No. You can paint your nose in your butt, but you can't paint your bloodline.
And if you're in a circumstance where necessity dictates you have to be with them,
right,
then you have to deal with it, put up with it for as long as you can or until your situation can change, which yours did.
Right. I guess I didn't word it right. Let me see. So, for instance, you and my bio dad have someone you both know that you deal with routinely. Mm-hmm. And my bio dad did a lot of stuff for him. But what's mind-blowing is that this individual states how, he's so family-oriented, but now he has seen firsthand how they don't speak to us, like at Christmas party, or whatever, and he showed up and we were there. He didn't come over and speak to us or talk to us. And so we just bowed out and didn't go to the next several Christmas parties. But for people like that I'm speaking about, they obviously can see that this is what, is being said, but it's not really what it is. How do they not just be like, wow, how do they?
I don't know, because I don't go in depth. I call it also all office gossip. I don't go in depth with those individuals about their change of perception of these individuals, or hey, what's your thought now on this one? Now that you've seen over the years, just tell me, is it any different? Is it better? Is it worse? You've seen it firsthand. So, yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know how they don't say wow and then confront me and hey, let's sit down and have a chat.
Exactly.
This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm seeing.
Right.
What's going on here?
Right.
I think I see the truth because I'm hearing something different.
Right.
No.
Narcissistic people they play victim. They really put a number on you, and they literally never take accountability for anything that they do, ever. Never, ever can they be held accountable for their actions. Everything gets, like, I was blamed for him still working later in life, which to me is ludicrous, but we aren't even there and haven't been there for a very long time, and yet he's still working, but I'm not even there, right? And I'm not giving financial business of theirs out there, but they didn't need to work. And I was paying for 99% of our stuff that we were going through. And the answer to everything was, well, I'm trying to take care of them. I'm trying to whatever. It's not like there's a mortgage. There's not like there's a car payment. There's not like any of that for them. But the way of, feel bad for me. I'm an older person and I'm trying to work to do the right thing. And then years and years go by and, I'm still working. I mean, I just, like my therapist said, you can't ever wrap your head around it because that's not who you are. And you'll never understand that mindset because of the fact that it just doesn't make sense to how that is. I couldn't imagine going to sleep at night and laying your head down on a pillow, knowing that you don't even claim your grandchild. I mean, I know for a fact that my grandfather was supposed to have heart surgery. And he was like, if I needed it right now, I'd be on the OR table. He's like, I have golf with my daughter. My granddaughter, sorry. I consider him like my dad. I have golf with my grandbaby and we'll do it the day after. And he's like, if I really needed it right now, I'd be on your table. And he was like, so guess what? We're going to do it after, and there were times I stayed in that hospital with him constantly. And, I told my husband he had stitches and then he had staples in his neck. And he would tell me, climb the ladder. And I was like, what? And I was little. I was like 8. And he was like, yeah, you want to feel it? It feels funky. And so I was like, what? So I took my index finger and I went by my grandmother's direction and cleaned my hands first. And I started to take my finger up the staples. And I was like, oh my God, this is weird, right? And then I was like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. And he's like, no, I don't feel it. I don't feel it at all. Nothing. I'm good. And then when I had a surgery and I had staples, I was like, I wonder what it felt like for him. Holy shit. That's all I'm going to say. I have a high pain tolerance, but holy shit. When I'm pushing on my staples, I was like, he had to have some kind of medication on board because that is not pleasant. It really is not pleasant. But when you love that person, and I know it's such a whacked out, reminder, but there's nothing when you love someone that you don't do for those people that you love. And, I would walk through hell in a handbasket in New York second for someone I care about. And You know that better than anybody. But I've always been made to be like this heartless, cold, malice, manipulative bitch, And the thing is that if you know me, you know that that's not the case.
And there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 followers on A Contagious Smile, and they can attest to your kindness and your heart.
I don't know where you got that number from. We have over 1 million just on Instagram alone.
I saw one the other day. It said 602,000 on one of the Contagious Smile.
Right, that was just like for that image. Like we put out the video of the upcoming book release, and in like 7 hours it was 1.2 million. And then the next day I did another video and it got over 600,000. That could be the number.
No, I'm talking about just followers, not views.
Right. Oh, Instagram. We have 2 Instagram accounts. One of them has over 600,000. The other one has over 400,000. Okay. So you put those together, and then you put the followers on our podcast and Facebook and TikTok and everything else. You have to add all those together. But and I mean.
No one would say you're a bad person other than them two duckheads.
I don't know.
And my mom.
I could name all these. But. I hated it because I was so worried like your opinion would change when you read this stuff. There was a lot.
Well, a little bit more deep-seated animosity towards him.
Was that possible?
Yes. Because of the shit. Now, it's kind of like Faith and I pulling pranks on each other. We do it throughout the year. We do it every day. We play pranks on each other. But this was like an ongoing game with him that he was always in control. And how can I be more spiteful, more mean to my daughter and my wife, my roommate, and my granddaughter? How can I be more unjust to them? How can I abuse them more?
Right.
So y'all, be sure you get both these books, Who Kicked First and Narc Who's There, and get to know Victoria and who and what she is. She's so much more now, and we thank her for coming forward and writing both these books. It takes a lot, y'all. I'm talking a lot, and I don't even know the half of it. It took her 10 years to get the first book out, and I couldn't even get through a page and a half without breaking down. And now I get to see the grandparent side coming into light in the second prequel.
Well, my bio parents and her grandparents, not my grandparents. I want to make sure we read that correctly. But I can put a workbook out in a day. I can spit a workbook out quick, fast, in a hurry for anxiety and manipulation, and also have one about recognizing the masks of manipulation and narcissism that's coming out. But this has been really hard because I do feel like. I have a lot of gratitude for them letting us stay there. I am not perfect. I've made mistakes. I admit that tenfold. I admit it in the book. I am not perfect. I've made mistakes. But when you're a child, a teenager, or even adult, it's still your parents, that generation above you, that is supposed to, be the parent. I'm still the kid. So they should be like, hey, even when I was a teenager or a young child, it should have been, hey, I'm the parent. Let me make this right. Like, he would give me the silent treatment. And it was, well, why aren't you talking to me? And the rebuttal was, well, why aren't you talking to me? I am. And he would repeat what I said. And he would go forever. And if somebody else made him mad, I would literally apologize for somebody else's behavior just so he would start talking to me again. And that's kind of the mindset that it was. And it's tough because you're kind of like in this way of how do you make yourself not fall into the hardship of what you see day in and day out. Like, our house isn't a house. It's a home. We have a home. And, I mean, it could probably fit in their first floor. But they have, when you go in there, it's this cold, heartless dwelling. It's not a dwelling. You know what I mean? It's like you go in there and it's just, you can't, don't touch the walls. what's on the bottom of your shoes? Don't bring in any dirt. The fact that they don't think their house is big enough for 2 dogs is just mind blowing to me. The fact that, like, I mean, it's just the simple things that, for instance, everybody knows Faith has to be hooked up at night, okay? And this part is not in the book, but she always wanted to say goodnight to her grandfather. Now, you have to remember she was never close to her grandmother, but that's because Raisin, as we called him, always talked so badly about his wife to Faith. So, of course, she's going to start believing, and when he's like, look how she treats you and look how she treats her son. And Faith sees this. And what's worse is that if you took all that out of the equation, Faith saw how she treated me, and I am her mom, and she couldn't grasp how she could have such a different, environment where she saw how I was treated by my mom and how she's treated by me as her mom. It was night and day different, right? And so Mimi had told Faith that she didn't love me, she didn't like me. If something happened to me, kind of attitude about it. But she never wanted to say goodnight to her. So I would text Raisin and say, are you busy or whatever? She wants to come in and say goodnight. Faith went so far as to wait till Mimi was at the bathtub during that time of the night because she didn't even want to see her. And he would say, I'm on the phone, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, which was a prime time for him to talk to one of the women, was when she was in the bathtub. So she would say, can he come up and give me a hug? Can he come up and say goodnight? And he was like, she can come down to me. And I'm like, she's hooked up to her machine. Like, she just got hooked up. And it's on an IV pole. It's not something that you can just like put a backpack on. You could, but it's not set up that way. And she's hooked up to it.
And there's 2 flights of stairs at the time, right?
From our side to theirs was only 1, okay. Unless he was in the office. The old house. No, this is the one you were with me at.
Okay.
If we were up at our side, then we would come down the side, go through the hall to the kitchen, and all the way down the other corridors. But if he was in the office, it was 2 flights.
Yeah.
And he would say, if she wants to be bad enough, she'll come down here. He wouldn't come up to her. And I'm like, she's hooked up. Well, she should have done it before she got hooked up. And it's like, it's your granddaughter. She's hooked up to this machine, and you can't come up and tell her goodnight. And then it's just one thing after another. I was always just trying to shield it, but there's so many times where you want to just say, screw it, and just fall into that. But then you end up just like them. And Faith is the furthest person in this world who deserves to have that for a parent. Yeah. And I was not going to let her have it. And then it would have made A, me no different than them. B, it would have made the fact that they won. And I'm not giving them that kind of power. And that is just horrible. I mean, to go through and see some of the stuff, we were talking before we recorded that we have emails where they reached out to Idiot, who I call Idiot is the abusive ex, letting him know how she was. And I mean, that I have no words that I can say on air for that. And I mean, you were dumbfounded as well. And the one thing I think you can safely say about me is that I go above and beyond to prove my innocence all the time. And I know it's annoying. I know it is. But I have learned by so many beautiful people, mostly women, because that's who I get to speak with most of the time, is that that's all we have is our word. Everything else is taken from us. Our self-esteem, our self-worth, our self-courage. Everything is stripped from us by these narcissistic, abusive people in our lives. And the only thing we have is our word. So we go above and beyond to prove our word that we are the ones telling the truth. But then they turn around and spin it again. Well, why would you have proof of it? Why? Are you spying on me? Are you doing this to hurt me? Why would you do this? You just don't believe I deserve to be happy? Why would you have this? Why? It doesn't matter. The point is that you have it to show that you are mentally confident. You're sane, regardless of what you're said and what you're told. And you go above and beyond to prove your point. And it's, and my therapist husband said, I think it's pretty accurate. He said, I asked you a story 11 years ago, and if I asked it to you right now, I know you would give it to me verbatim, word for word, without deviating even a comma in it, because that's how you are.
Now let's clarify. She said my therapist's husband.
My therapist's husband. Her husband.
Right. The way you said it, my therapist, like as if I was the therapist.
Well, you are, but just not that kind.
No.
I mean,
The
do you think
husband
that's
of
true?
your therapist.
The husband of my.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's accurate?
It is accurate. It's very accurate. And your curse, as you call it, is a blessing to most.
No, I hate it. I hate having that photographic memory. Maybe I wouldn't have hated it if I didn't have all this crap happen.
It's just, you just have one of those incredible brains that doesn't shut off, and runs 1,000,000 miles a minute. And that's probably why you have 3 doctorates.
There we go again.
Sitting on your ass in here.
I love your face when I was giving information about faith medically, and your face was hilarious. Do you remember what you said when I was going through?
Oh, at the bedside?
Yeah.
Yes. I did. So maybe she's an RN, PN, LN, I don't know.
QZ.
One of those, right? She's asking my wife some of the medical history, such as allergies, last shots given, what about this medication, what about this operation, what about this procedure? And my wife stood there, casual as all get out, not excited, not stressing, not looking at her Palm Pilot, not looking at her, not looking at, Rolodex.
No. You know how many people are going to ask Alexa what a Rolodex is now?
Y'all look it up. And when this lady asked my gorgeous freaking computer brain wife anything, she sped it off like a damn Uzi. I mean, just rapid fire. On this date, July 1974, I was wearing black socks. My little girl had this much cc injected into a needle of this caliper, and rapid fire. She's allergic to this. She had a procedure on this date, this time, and you were wearing a Hawaiian shirt. It was just one after the other. Medications. Oh, she's been DC'd from this medication in 1984. Okay. It was crazy, and that's how her brain works. So, if anyone ever questions or attempts to question my wife and her memory, you might as well go dig a hole, dude. You're done. You are done. Okay. So, yes, I was flabbergasted. And I should have been, because I'm just, it's not really, I'm flabbergasted as if I'm stunned. I'm just amazed. Okay, amazed, because I'm married to this Terminator. Why?
Is that a metal joke? Because I'm all metal.
Supercomputer.
Because I'm all metal. It's a big joke.
Freaking Valkyrie Vixen over here.
Valkyrie Vixen? No, I don't know what Valkyrie.
A warrior.
See, we have a different opinion on genres of interest when it comes to entertainment.
No.
So, yeah, that's kind of a little bit of, but I mean, from day one, you and I, we basically known each other through our 20s, 30s, 40s, and now your 50s.
Hey, watch it now. If you mention anything about the pooper shooter.
I'm saying about your colonoscopy that you got out of this last time, but you promised faith you would have it done. And either you're going to get it done or she's going to do it for you. Because you give her your word. And after everything that little girl has done and gotten through, you owe her that. You owe her. But I would have to say, I think, Dana asked a question and I was like,
Dana.
That would be a Michael question. That I was completely different when we dated, because I was like this corporate.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. How would you describe me back then?
I can't keep it clean.
Try.
Oh, God. There's no way. There's no way. When you see a very well endowed Playboy bunny dressed in a 3-piece pinstripe suit with shoulder pads and glasses,
by the way,
long auburn red hair. Oh man, and I don't know. You didn't wear glasses. You did, but I don't recall them on. If you had them on, that school teacher look.
I did have them on.
You were just. and you had a damn Superman of steel handshake back then, and buns of steel titanium.
You know, what did you used to do? You used to tell guys. What would you tell them?
I didn't say this on air. Nope.
You would walk up and say, "Hey, dude, you want to feel buns of steels for $5? I'll let you broke my girlfriend's butt."
I'm not pimping out my wife like that.
Back then, you did, and I didn't. I said, "If you grab my butt, you will lose your hand." You are not
thoroughly impressed.
I was
with your buns.
But hold on, I was obsessed. I was like an addict to the gym. Why?
Don't look at me.
I knew, just like my grandmother told me, I knew. I stood there after meeting you for the very first time and I said, I get it. I just met my soulmate. I get it. I got it. I'm going to marry this man. And I knew I was going to marry him. And you told me as time went on, and people are going to give me a bunch of crap about this.
Oh, shit. No, they're going to give me shit.
Probably. There were two things that you asked me not to do. What were they?
Probably cut your hair.
Yep.
Because your hair is gorgeous. And I probably said back then, because I was a jerk, y'all don't beat me up for it.
Can you use another term?
Okay, don't whoop me for it.
Another term.
Don't judge me too harshly.
Better.
That probably would leave if you get fat.
Now, with him saying this,
shit.
I worked on the opposite side of the country, and I would travel 3-4 days a week, and I had to make sure I stayed in a facility that had a gym. I would walk everywhere. I would go up the stairs, not the elevator. I was in the gym constantly. When I was home, I made sure to take a red eye. Because now he's all sweet to me right now, you guys. He's laughing profusely and trying to hold my hand. And I would go to work in the morning. Before I would go to work, I'd work out. And then he worked nights. And so when I would get off work, I would go to the gym and work out, go home and cook him a home-cooked meal, shower, and every night he wanted to see me. When he wasn't working, he was working an extra job. He always wanted me to come up there. He asked me every single night. And I said, well, I don't want you to get tired of me. He's like, I'm not going to get tired of you. And I would go up there and bring him dinner or whatever, no matter how tired I was. But I was and had become addicted to the gym like there was no tomorrow because I wanted to make my man happy. Now, the irony of this is that I was this corporate person who I wouldn't even look in the direction of my executive team that were all men. And I had somebody come up to me and I was like, no, go away, whatever. Ended up, he knew my now husband and this woman's a bitch. He had no idea that I was his girlfriend at the time. And then when I came up and my husband kissed me, he was like, you know her? And I said, I told you I was taken. And he was like, she was so rude. Well, and I didn't know he was a cop then. He was in plainclothes. But the point is that I worked out like a banshee to make sure that I stayed in like shape. Don't make that face for you. And then he would go around and say, hey, dude, you want to feel buns of steel for $5? And I'd be like, if he touches me, it's done. Like, he's not putting his hands up. And then, now you look at it and then they weren't in my life at that point. Like when we first were together, they really were not. I had that one apartment. I was living by myself and we really were nothing but on a professional level.
I didn't meet them until way later.
It was way later when we had lunch with my brother, who had all sorts
of... Look at the time.
Who had all sorts of...
Thank y'all for listening to another episode of Famous Now.
And so, but the point is, and after everybody, I used to get so much crap. And it's so funny because I let Michael read a lot of the evidence and try to decide what we were putting in and what we weren't. And he was like, is he talking about me here? Because he would mention you by name. His joke was, what parking lot are you sitting in waiting on him now? And the thing is that was so ironic is that whenever anyone tried to get me to meet someone else, I always questioned them against you. And I was like, I don't want to meet anybody else. I don't want anyone else. I have one. And then I was like, nope, you're not them. But I had a list of things that I was not attracted to, things I did not want out of a boyfriend. And Kim, bless her heart.
I met every one of them.
Bless her heart. The first time she met him, we were at like a bar restaurant place, and he walks in, and I said, "Are you taking any food to go?" And he said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "Well, I'll order whatever you want on the menu." You dropped the menu on the ground and said, "Stand on it." And Kim was like, "What?" And you said, "Yeah, I can take her to go." And she said, "I have to ask." And she was like, "What do you drive?" And he said, "A truck." And then she looks at me, and I just shook my head. She's like, "When you're not working, what's your attire of choice?" And he started saying, and she's looking at me, and I'm just sliding in the chair. And then he went somewhere for a minute to go get a drink, I don't know. And she looks at me, she goes, "You're going to marry him." I was like, "I know." And she goes, "Have you done the tag test yet?" And I was like, "No." Where you pull the guy's shirt. See, I put myself on the spot. You pull the shirt back a little bit from their collar in the back, and you're like, "Oh, your tag's sticking up." And it lets you see if they have back hair. And I was not attracted to back hair because it's like if I wanted to lay on a rug, I'd lay on a rug. And I was pretty adamant about it. And she was like, "Have you done the back hair test?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't done the tag test." And it has back hair. And then I'm this person that's like, how can a guy spend time and get dressed, make himself look nice? He's shaven, clean shaven, has on, his cologne, nice shirt, pants, and gets lazy at his feet. And he's either wearing flip-flops or he's wearing, God help me, socks with flip-flops. Now, that might turn some women on. It doesn't do that for me. And she asked him, of course, he's like, "Oh, I love my flip-flops. I love my flip-flops. And I love my Hawaiian shirts. And and she's like, "I got to know what kind of music you listen to." And I just was like, "I don't want to know. I don't want to know." And this was right when we met. It wasn't that long till you met her. And he says, "I like country music." And I thought she was going to pee in that seat. And she's like, "Yep, you're going to marry him." Because he was like, I mean, I like that music, but that was all you listen to. Like, we would be sitting in a car together, a squad car, or one of my vehicles, and he'd be listening, and everything was country. And he would sing it to me. And he would, like, serenade me these songs. And it was just literally, like, the song that turned me to country was our song. Do you remember it?
My Kind of Range.
By Tim McGraw. And I fell in love with that song. And then I got switched over to country. But yeah, I became a workout banshee for this man. Well, then I know. Yeah.
So,
floating.
Y'all can find her book, soon to be released. It'll be through Amazon. And are we going to sell it through our website?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I'm also wanting to put it out in like local bookstores, things of that nature. Yeah. Little milestone for me to do. And everybody's already asking what's next. Because I do all these workbooks and other books and things like that. But, what are you and I going to do?
Well, I think that should wrap it up, right? For your story?
I was going to write a third called I Gotta Hand It to You, talking about the process of my amputation. But instead, I made it a chapter in the book. I Gotta Hand It to You, or Let Me Hand It to You, or Let Me Lend You a Hand, something like that. Okay. I'm tired and slept. So that was a chapter I put in here, all about how I literally lost my arm and hand. And people are now going to go, well, what does the bio parents or bio grandparents have to do with that? Yeah, you're going to have to redefine that one out. That was a doozy.
Yeah.
So, I would, you and I should write a book together.
Y'all keep looking out on the webpage.
You kidding me? Why won't you write a book with me?
I've tried.
Probably.
You can type up Victoria Cure anywhere and find out a lot about her.
Anything else you want to say?
I love you.
What have you done?
Nothing yet.
What are you going to do?
Our daughter's washed 2 dogs since we've been in here.
Well, maybe we need to keep going so she'll get third.
She's trying. The third one is Rusty.
Rusty's was the second one.
Nope, she didn't know.
Wow. So we have 3 beautiful golden retrievers. Each of us have really our own. Stucco is my service dog, who was named after my husband, Stucco. because Kim actually named him because he was stuck on me. And I thought that was hilarious. It was just funny. And the day I saw Stucco, I was like, that's it. He's it. And I've never had really a boy dog. But I don't know how you explain Stucco, and I have he is so amazing. Even after my amputation, he was only a couple months old. He was just so attentive and sweet.
Attentive, yes. That's the perfect word for him.
He never crossed the line. He didn't try to hurt my arm, or he saw it was bandaged. He was only a few months old. And he was just as sweet as can be. Everyone in our family here in our home, we joke constantly. We laugh all the time. I don't think there's been a day when we don't. Like dinner tonight, I hate being an amputee. I went to grab the spatula and I didn't see, and I knocked over
The
my
what?
spatula.
Spatula?
The spatula.
Spatula.
What do you call it?
There's not an R on the end of spatula.
Is it what?
It's a spatula.
A what? Well, we have our redneck corner today. And I knocked over his sweet tea.
With a spatula.
Okay. With a serving utensil. And it went everywhere. And Faye, we immediately look at Faye to make sure she's not going to choke on her food. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And we're all laughing about it because it wasn't intentional. And that's just how we are. But when we're kidding around and we go to bed, Stucco jumps in. And if my husband tries to mess around with me, Stucco shoves him the other way. It's hysterical. We've got pictures of it. He literally will take his paws and push him in the opposite direction. And he's like, that's my mom. Go away.
It's more like, that's my woman.
No.
And I try to get fresh with you.
No.
A little snuggle, a little kissing. He comes over and butts me away.
No. He's just protective of his mama. And then we have Faith's doggy, Rusty, who is he looks like a bear. That dog is huge. He is huge. And he looks like a bear, a big bear, right? And the sweetest thing. But if you come up to Faye, or me, or Michael, and you're one of the other dogs, he will growl at you, but he's not going to do anything. But he is just so protective that he doesn't play around. And he loves to be cuddled. He wants to be held. He wants to be snuggled. He wants just that, put your face next to his and cuddle him for a moment. Then we have the spatula, which he's laughing at me because the baby is Uno. And Uno is still a puppy, but Uno is spastic. He is crazy. And of course, now you know who he belongs to. That would be my husband.
I'm trying to calm him down.
And he's great when it's just him and I. He's really sweet.
He does snuggle.
Yes, because I'm teaching him to snuggle and be sweet. But
he does get wild.
Holy crap. You know what? And I'm really, okay, watch how fast my husband tries to end this episode, with the fact that your dog is in the LGBT community.
No. And that concludes today's episode.
It's true. Your dog is on that stage. And that's okay.
And Michael.
You have a gay dog, and it is okay.
Please tune in next week.
You need to accept.
Another assault.
You need to accept that your dog is on the spectrum of being gay.
And good night.
And it's okay.